He is muted.
Yeah, he is muted. Doctor. Okay,
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Okay, I was saying, Dr. Oyo, you're welcome to our class. The class that you have here, these are masters tourism and hospitality students at the Midland State University. And this is their final year. They are now preparing to go to the field to undertake research. So they have to do this module first to understand the nitty-gritties.
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
The backgrounds of research methodology. So they are here to know what research is right from the beginning. What does research entail?
Okay.
So guys, we have got Dr. Oyo here. Dr. Oyo is based at the University of Namibia, is once said. So Dr. Oyo, he focuses more on quantitative research, but he is not limited. He also covers qualitative research as well. He can teach you, you master, you know everything. So yeah, thank you very much. So Dr. Oyo, here is the floor for you.
Thank you, Dr. Msavengane, for your nice words and a warm welcome. I'll try to do my best. So greetings, everyone. Ompile, Tendai. Let me see some names here. Florence, Jane, Manyara, someone Prim, Galax, Joe, and Nyasha. Welcome to this class. So I was asked to talk to you about how do we conduct research. Maybe on another day we're going to talk about how do we write a research proposal, how do we do quantitative research, which is more of the stuff that I'm interested in. I know Regis is a qualitative researcher. I have done few articles in that space, but no, not so much. But most of my work is in quantitative research. So going through this, this is about me. As said, quite an active scholar in the areas that I'm really keen of developing literature on. So I'm keen on developing literature on ICT and service operations. I'm very keen on developing literature on distressed destinations. How do we manage tourism in those kind of settings? I have so much vested interest in higher education and technology-enabled learning, quite a number of projects going on there. I have done some publications in Web of Science, in Scopus indexed journals, 8 book chapters to my credit. Most of them are single authored, presented in several conferences in Europe, and in Africa, and sometimes locally. Currently, the biggest project that I'm working on at the moment is I'm editing a book on teaching and learning during a global pandemic. My future research is all about developing streams of literature on ICT and service industries, technology-enabled learning, artificial intelligence and robots, very few, in a few more days, you'll be able to see some of these papers coming through, developing literature on distressed economies, like I've said, and e-learning methodologies. So about me overall, my research philosophy is grounded in my commitment to the university, in my commitment to the discipline, and my students to stay current in my field. And I'm very eager to contribute new knowledge to theory and help industry practitioners solve their problems. They've been involved in quite a number of smart agriculture projects in Namibia, and we have been developing fantastic interventions for the agricultural economy. Don't worry, I have never done agriculture in my life, but I am capable of giving them solutions to their problems. So that's me, and that's why I think I'm qualified to talk to you based on the things that I write and the things that I do. So that's me then. I'll be going through quite a number of issues, and let's feel free to interact and to talk. That's the kind of lecturer that I am. Okay. Ompile, what are you writing about? What do you want to write about? Okay, he's offline. Let me talk to Tendai, who is on video. Tendai, what are you thinking of writing about? Tendai, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm thinking of writing about the impact of coronavirus on the tourism and hospitality operations. So I'm not yet so sure about how I'll structure it, how I'll put it at the moment, but that is what is in my mind.
Okay, that's an interesting topic, COVID-19 and hospitality operations. Ompile, what are you planning to write about?
Before COVID, I was much interested on redeveloping the unutilized tourism destinations that we do have locally here in Botswana.
Oh, in Botswana, okay.
Yes.
Redeveloping unutilized tourism destinations. Okay, which is a brilliant point. I offered suggestions for research in one of my papers about this. Let me ask one final one. Nyasha, what are you planning to write about?
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
All right. I was thinking something to do with agritourism. I haven't really.
Agritourism.
Yes,
Okay.
it's another form of tourism in Zimbabwe. But at the moment, I'm writing Dr. Msavengana's topic. It's a assignment.
Yes.
About seeking COVID-19 funding from the national government to resuscitate my operations on my imaginary company. So that's something that's interesting.
Oh, all right. Brilliant. So I think generally people have got ideas about what they want to write about. So one of the things that I need you to follow me through is towards the end of my lecture, you should be able to see whether writing about agritourism makes sense or not. I don't know whether at the Midlands State University you do defense. I'm actually one of the most difficult people here at the university to convince that your research makes sense. Okay, so let's see how it's gonna pan out. This is some traditional definition of what research is all about. So when someone is doing research, what are they doing? They are simply collecting data, and they need to analyze the data, and they need to make meaning of the data. Yeah. So one of these days when I was doing my PhD, my supervisor said to me, I want you to make sense of the madness you have created. Because I had tried to mix the certain analysis into all that. So what we are saying here is methodology or a research is systematic. It needs people with order. That's the first point. You should be orderly. So if you are thinking about agritourism, there should be some systematic understanding of the construct that you are working on. The same happens with Ompile, who wants to do a redeveloping of underutilized tourism destinations, let's say ahead of Maun, let's say ahead of Kasane and all those kind of spaces. So someone has to be systematic, and you should be able to analyze this data, and you should be able to interpret the data. You need to tell me, what does it mean? Is it good for Botswana tourism? Is it good for Zimbabwean tourism? Is it bad? And how good is it? And how bad is it? Where do we go from here? Because we need those kind of answers. So, and one of the things that I always emphasize is there are things that do require research, and there are things that do require implementation. Listen to this. I'm going to show you sometime later. Things like hunger don't require research. Crime don't require research. We all know what to do with crime. So don't come to me and present that I'm going to do a systematic collection about crime, or I'm going to do a systematic collection about hunger. So when we are doing research, the idea is we need to answer certain problems. We need to solve certain problems. So the problem I'm thinking about for Ompile right now at the moment is perhaps we have oversold Mauni and Kasane. And in the process, poverty has been rampant in other sections of Botswana. Yet we have got tourism resources that are lying there. Can we find a solution to that? Then I am becoming very scientific. I've gone beyond simple rhetoric and all those kind of issues. Second point, it is very important for people doing research to make sure that you navigate the scientific steps that are involved when one is conducting research. So it's systematic, it's scientific. So if I miss the science-ness of your research, then it becomes a street talk. It becomes a pub talk. We are not talking about research in that kind of space. So to show you what I'm talking about, these are the elements that one really needs to go through in order for you to say, okay, I am doing science here. I am now a scientist, and I'm doing some kind of research. Okay, so let me show you in a moment what I'm talking about here. Let me move my screen to the other side. These are the steps of scientific research. You have selected an area. I wanted to test that, and I can see from these candidates that Nyasha has got a topic on agritourism. Someone has got a topic on seeking funding during COVID. Someone has got a topic of the impact of COVID-19 on hospitality operations. Fantastic. You have an area of study, but don't be so happy about that. I can show you one or two things that are going to make you angry in a moment. You have selected your topic, okay? If you look at where I have put selection of the topic, I want you to go and read literature. Go and read literature about the impact of COVID-19 on hospitality operations. I have done a study on that. Dr. Msavengane has done a study on that. So I want you to do some literature review and find out Is the impact of COVID-19 on hospitality operations known or unknown? Yes or no? Before we go any further, if it is known, there is no need for your study. It ends there and it dies right there. Unless you have reconceptualized the thinking around COVID-19 and other issues that are not written about. Am I clear there? You select your area, you select your topic, go into literature, read about 5 or 10 articles gonna give you an indication, do I have something concrete here to do or I don't have? So my challenge to you is, Ompile, look at what has been done about marketing of unknown destinations, marketing of lesser known destinations. What does research say? Is there a need for us to do that research? Nyasha, look at agritourism. Do we really need to develop, do you really need to do an agritourism study in Zimbabwe to develop an alternative? Because if this is something that has been done extensively, forget about it not being in Zimbabwe. If it has been done extensively and there are answers to what you are seeking about, we don't encourage you to do research. Simply take that research that was done by other people and implement it in your country. Does that sound exciting?
Yeah.
Okay. So if answers are found, there is no need for research. But if there are no answers, then go back. So if you look at my literature review there where I'm putting my cursor, if answers are found, no study, it's end of discussion. If you do your literature review and you find that there are some gaps, at least you should have some gaps about this that you have understood from literature that, oh, okay, in as much as studies are done, studies have focused more on cultural tourism, this and that, and that and that. But agritourism as a form of tourism is coming up as a new area, and more research is required for us to understand the product of the tourism in agritourism. I don't know what it looks like, but that's how you're gonna do it. Then you move from there and develop some crude questions around your areas of research. And when you find, when you develop these crude research questions, look if there are answers around you. And if there are no answers, I point you back to literature and try to read literature and find out what does literature say about all these things. Right. So your literature review, you don't wait to do literature review in your literature review chapter. Literature review is done the moment you select a topic. Go straight into literature review, review what literature say and see if there is need for this study. And if there is need for that study, what is the justification of that particular study? So once that is cleared, then you can refine your research questions, look at ethical issues. I always want my students to look at ethical issues very early. Look at it this way. I was supervising somebody who was doing a research on the financial regulatory system in Namibia. And I told you early enough that this kind of study you are doing, data collection is going to be problematic for you because you are not going to satisfy this kind of ethical requirement. So when you think about your research persons, also think about the ethical issues that are likely to be in that space. Are you going to get the data easily? Are you going to, let me mute some people. Are you going to get the data easily? Are you going to satisfy certain ethical requirements easily? If that issue is solved, good job. And when you look at your refined research questions, try to think if there are any hypotheses that you might really want to start thinking about before you read to literature to confirm those and to see whether these researcher hypothesis, goals, and objectives are actually worth it in doing this particular study. And once your research questions, hypothesis, goals, and aims have been defined, the next thing that you might need to do is to think about your design. I always encourage students that design should not wait until you are in the methodology chapter.
Yes.
This is how it works. So if you think about your topic, you have an idea about what problem you want to formulate, I encourage you to think immediately about what kind of design is going to help you deal with this research. Most of the times, if you wait until too late, you might think a case study design is going to work, when in actual fact, a causal design is the best one. And if your design is wrong, then it means the problem is not going to be solved. The data you have collected is going to be wrong. The analysis you have done is wrong. And when that paper is submitted to me as an examiner, I'm simply not going to pass that. Because things have been messed up there. So as you think about the topic, like for instance, if I quickly look at someone looking at the impact, what comes to my mind immediately as a quantitative researcher is the student is interested in measuring the cause and effect of COVID-19 on hospitality operations. And immediately what I would want my student to do is to make sure they operationalize the construct hospitality operations. How is it measured? Is it going to be measured straight, or you need certain proxies to be around that, and all those kind of stuff? And immediately that kind of a topic is already pointing me to an explanatory design or an experimental design, because its focus is about cause and effect, right? So it should always tell you those things earlier, and you should have an understanding of that. And once you are done with your study design, you should also start to think about who is your population, what is your unit of analysis, where do I collect the data from? Most of the times in my 11-year teaching career, I have realized that people don't always think about these things early enough. By the time they start to develop their instrument, they have no idea who do they give the instrument to. And all I'm trying to encourage you is, as you think about your topic, as you think about the impact of COVID-19 on hospitality operations, who are your respondents? Are you asking this information from hospitality managers? Which kind of managers are you looking at? Are you asking this kind of information from everybody in the street? And who is this everybody in the street? And so we need to think about all this stuff. So what is your population? And when you think about your population, think carefully about your population in relation to your design. I am a quantitative researcher, and what we emphasize on is, when you are choosing a sample, we want big samples. We want big samples. So if your design is already in quantitative in nature, and your population is very small, and from that population, your sample size is going to be very small, then it means you have got a flawed design in the process, and you can't do a meaningful research on this. So these are some of the issues that perhaps people really need to think about. Then after thinking about your population, think about how you're going to select the participants. Is it probabilistic? Is it non-probabilistic? And at this level, I know what probability sampling is about, so please don't teach me when you're writing your proposal. I know what non-probability sampling is. So what we generally expect our students to do when they are writing research is to tell me, I'm proposing to use convenience sampling. And
Yes.
after that, the next thing that I should be reading is what is the justification for that kind of method of selection.
Exactly.
Why? And please don't give me a textbook kind of stuff because Creswell said it is going to give me advantages. No. Give me a justification that is based on the current research question, that is based on the topic, that is based on issues that you have found in review, not what Creswell says. We all know what Creswell says. We all know what kind of designs are available. But what makes it appropriate for you is what we are interested in. Okay. Then in your topic, again, if you are doing, let's say, quantitative research and all those kind of stuff, it's very important to identify early on what is your independent variable and what is your dependent variable. Qualitative researchers, I'm sure Dr. Msawengen would confirm with me, they are not worried with those. We are very worried with that. We want to know which variable is influencing the other. So for Tendai's topic, COVID is an independent variable that is influencing hospitality operations. There comes a problem. COVID-19, how is it measured? Hi. Right? We want to understand if cause and effect. So you need to think around how are you going to measure COVID-19 so that you manipulate it and put it as a variable that influences hospitality operations. Again, hospitality operations is vague. What kind of operations are you looking at? I teach operations strategy myself. And when we look at operations strategy, we are looking at a series of variables. Are we looking at processes? Are we looking at financial? Are we looking at what we really call operations in that space? So identify your variables. Which of these variables are independent? Which of these ones are mediating variables? Which of these ones are dependent variables? And as you do this, beware of your bias that is there at the side. And it is this bias that has got the potential to, let me tell you a side story. Someone was, PhD didn't pass last week because the examiner felt that the student was very biased with the interpretation of the results. So you need to be careful on that. Then you think about your research tools. Based on your questions, what tool are you going to use? Is it a questionnaire? Is it an interview guide? Interviews and interview guide. The other one is a tool. The other one is a method of collection. I always get it funny when people say my instrument is an interview. I'm going to use interviews as my instrument. Interviews are methods of data collection. An interview guide becomes the instrument. A questionnaire becomes an instrument. So think about those things early enough. What kind of instrument or what kind of research tool are you going to use to collect your data? Are you going to use an instrument that is already in existence? One that is already in existence really doesn't need a pilot study. But if you developed your interview guides, if you developed your questionnaire, please always test it. And even if when you're doing qualitative research, I always insist people should do a pilot test for the interview. Because the principles are the same. You don't need to wait there until you get into an interview and then you see some of the questions are not coming nicely in an interview. Pilot test it and so forth. So in brief, this defines what research is all about. It's not an easy job, but it's an interesting job if you get to know what is required for you. Quickly, maybe let me run it through so that in a few minutes I'll open up discussions. When you select your research area, selecting a research area is like, I always say it's like selecting a wife or selecting a husband. Don't select a research area that doesn't have interest for you. Fortunately, you are doing it for a master's, but if you do it for a PhD, you know you're going to stick around 3-4 years. So when you select your research topic, select something that is of interest to you. Select something that you are a specialist or you understand. So it depends on whether you understand what it is or what it is not. Whether you have got sufficient interest in it. So you should have interest in agritourism. You should have interest in understanding the impacts of COVID-19. You should have interest on understanding why certain destinations are not popular. You should have an interest in understanding the various forms of funding. And also, when you choose a topic, if you are not good in quantitative research, I encourage you stay away from it. Me as a supervisor, it's not my duty to teach you how to do quantitative research. I don't do that. It's your methodology class that should teach you quantitative research. But when it comes to supervision, I'm supposed to just guide you. And if you don't know what you're doing about, then you are not going to get good help. So choosing topic also looks at, do you understand statistics? Do you have phobia for stats? Are you good at writing the story? Because that's the bit of what qualitative researchers should be doing. You're writing, how good is it? So your scientific background, your experience, all these things, these are elements of the researcher's characteristics that should help you to choose a topic. I have demonstrated earlier that when you are choosing a research topic, make sure, and please, I repeat, make sure that there is need for research in this area. Please make sure that there is need for research in this area. There is a research gap. There is a theoretical gap. There is a literature gap. There is a literature gap. So if you can't demonstrate the need of the research, usually, at least at my university, this proposal will not pass. Unless you are able to demonstrate that there is need for research. And also look at available resources. Of course, at UNAM, resources is not a limitation to the study. Neither is time a limitation to the study. I don't know about MSU. But look at resources, look at it this way. If you were to do the impact of COVID-19 on hospitality operations in Zimbabwe, do you have the money to cascade from Matabeleland to Mashonaland, from Mashonaland to Mashingo, from Mashingo to that, from Kasane to Mauni, from Mauni to Gaborone, from Gaborone to they're close to Northwest, Mafikeng, and all those kind of spaces. Did you have the time? Do you have the money? And when you select your topic, make sure that you understand what you are doing, and you also have got an idea to understand the characteristics of the problem. Somebody is talking about impact of COVID-19 on tourism operations. Make sure that when you are reading, you are able to understand the magnitude of tourism impact or COVID-19 on tourism operations. Are you able to read quantitative papers that have estimated this problem? Are you able to read qualitative papers that have estimated this problem? And so many other issues. Are you able to follow on the available interventions of the problem, the proposed solutions? Are you able also to critique them? That in as much as literature is on this, these proposed solutions are not going to work in Botswana. And what is the justification for that? These interventions are not going to work in Zimbabwe. And what is the justification for that? So generally, your study of your topic that you're going to do, make sure it's feasible, it's researchable, and you can prove that this study is needed. I always say that, especially when you're creating your problem statement, you have a burden of proof to say that this problem exists. You know, when a good problem statement is always a statement where I don't need to be convinced that you have a problem or you don't. If I read it, because you would have put it in a way that you have proved that a problem exists. So make sure it's feasible. Literature about that is available. Respondents for you to give the data are available. You may find out that you have chosen a topic where you want to let's say to ask in Africa, the presidents are always difficult to get. That's not a feasible study for you to do unless if you want to continue being at MSU for many years, because you will never get President Masisi to answer your questions. You never get President Mnangagwa to answer your questions and all those kind of stuff. That's not a feasible research. Make sure your research is feasible. The ease of data collection, the ease of data analysis, the ease of doing it, the ease of access to literature, and all those kind of stuff. So many stuff to do this. When you look at your research question, as an investigator, these are key things that I really find crucial. Make sure you have a research question, not a feeling, not an opinion, but make sure you have a research question that is crafted properly and that shows that this particular research is required. And when you have this research question, it must be very clear and it must be very specific. So if I can't get it, then it's not clear. It must reflect the objectives of your study. It must be in sync with that. There is normally what we call a golden thread. A golden thread is, if I read your topic, if I read every other part of your work, it should be able to flow. So if I read your research question, it's clear, and if it reflects on objectives, it reflects on the design, then your thread is good enough. So it must reflect the objectives of the study. It has no answer by common sense. So a good research question is a question where there is no answer by common sense. That takes me to what I have said earlier on. Crime is not a research topic because it is an answer by common sense. We all know what we need to do to deal with crime. We all know what we need to do to deal with hunger. We all know what we need to do to deal with gender violence and all those kind of stuff. So your research question must be framed at a level where we are not going to get an answer simply by using common sense. We are only going to get an answer by scientific processes, by conducting scientific research. So if a good research question is a research question that is no answer in literature. So that's the reason why I was saying, when you think about your research question, immediately delve into literature and see what does literature say about this. Is there a written material? If there is a written material, what is the focus? What is missing? What is the research done? What is the research not done? Then if there are elements of your questions that have not been covered in research, that is thumbs up, then it means you are good to go. So finding an answer to the question will solve, or at least help in solving the problem. So a good research question is something that when you found the answer, it is going to improve practice. It is going to, so if I'm to look at COVID-19, the last time I was working on it, I was thinking about if we are to really solve certain things in Africa, we also need to start embracing around contactless technologies and other issues. These are solutions that could not have come out as a result of common sense, but are only coming out as a result of research and so forth. For you who is developing redeveloping underutilized tourism destinations. We are looking at you giving us insights on how do we redevelop a Botswana tourism product so that it fits there. How do we redirect traffic that has been used to Kasane and start to move to Hansi or some other places there where tourism is rarely talked about. Those are the kind of insights that we expect from a good research question. Look at that donkey. This is what I want you to go through, and it's interesting. You really need to do a literature review. The last time I was checking, I have checked that, and I've seen that there are now over more than 1 million research papers that have been written on COVID. That's the picture. So if you are looking at COVID literature, you are swimming yourself into that kind of space. So literature is all about you getting to read scientific articles, scientific books, medical journals. If you are doing wellness tourism, reading about people's dissertations and other sources. And these ones should be very relevant to your area of study. So if you are looking at agritourism, for instance, you don't need to entirely just read around articles that are published in tourism main journals. There are also articles that are published in agricultural journals. And one of the things that I'm always keen on checking is to find out if someone is doing an interdisciplinary research, if they also read about literature outside their main area of study, which is tourism. If they also read about agriculture in general, do they understand the economics of agriculture? Do they understand agricultural products? Do they understand how then do we link agriculture and tourism? If I don't get that literature, oh well, like I said, I'm not very keen on passing those kind of proposals ahead or students ahead. And when you read your literature, my problem with students is they provide me a summary of literature. They don't review the literature. Providing a summary of literature is like saying Woyo said this, Ompile said that, Shumba said this, Denmark said that. My big question is, so what? So please really, really do a critical evaluation of that. What Woyo said, how similar is it from what Ompile said? And how different is it? What is the implication of the similarity? What is the implication of the difference? Does it make us understand things better? Does it make people become confused? What's your take on that? In this section, people should always have their voice heard. So when you do a review, we are simply saying you must be able to place each work in the context of its contribution. This is how it works. I have said this to one of my doctoral students this morning to say that when you are writing things, she was defining. So she would say, Kotler defines marketing as that. Ompile defines marketing as that. So she was giving me one definition after another, and I was saying that's not literature review. I want you to say Kotler defines marketing as this and that. However, Ompile defines marketing as that. The differences between these two definitions is Kotler focuses more on the traditional marketing mix, while Ompile focuses more on the extended marketing mix. Therefore, when people are defining marketing, it's very important for them that they include both the traditional and the extended marketing mix. That's a good review of literature. So you should be able to place each work in the context of its contribution so that we will be able to understand the subject under review. Secondly, you must be able to describe the relationship of that work to others under consideration. How different is your work from other people's work? So I would expect people writing something like about virtual reality has been applied to national parks, to theme parks, to museums, to hotels, but it has not been applied. What you would have read. So after saying that, tell us why we should be concerned about applying virtual reality to hospitality training, for instance, applying virtual reality to hospitality teaching, something like that. Identify new ways to interpret. So when you read an article, I want you to interpret that article. I want you to interpret that information and be able to shed whether there is a gap and what kind of gap it is. People have written about COVID-19 and hospitality operations, but I want you to identify what is the gap between all those thousands of literature that is available. Are you able to do that? So it's very important for you to read an article, read it to understand on the first day. On the next day, read it so that you are able to interpret it and be able to identify research gaps in previous research, because your current research is supposed to contribute to something. So if you cannot review literature to identify gaps, then it becomes difficult for you. Apart from that, in literature review, we also expect you as a researcher to be able to resolve conflicts among contradictory previous studies. So you would find out that someone would say, for instance, I think one of my studies, they found certain things contrary. Let's say in a certain country, price influences competitiveness. Then in another study, you find out that price does not influence competitiveness. Or in another study, you find out that destination branding does not encourage visitor loyalty. In another study, you find out that destination branding encourages visitor loyalty. How do you reconcile that? Because it's very important for you to demonstrate that. How do we resolve that? Should we continue investing money in branding when we know it doesn't encourage visitorship, when we know it doesn't encourage competitiveness, when we know in one study it doesn't encourage repeat visitation, then in another study, all these things are ticked. So we need to understand from your point, how do we deal with this? So one of the things will be, in as much as the findings on this element are contradictory, this research considers destination branding very important. Probably you cite Kotler and that because it generates more revenue for the destination, it generates more income for the destination, more arrivals for the destination, and kind of that. Those are the kind of issues that we should be reading when we are reviewing your work. Those are the kind of thoughts we should be listening to when you are doing any other stuff. Identify areas of prior research to avoid duplication. So we don't want you to duplicate issues. So you should be able to do some good literature review and find out what exactly has been covered and what exactly has not been covered, so that you don't duplicate issues. And finally, you should be able to place your work in the context of existing literature. So what we are looking at is, you will be having something like this. This is literature. So we want to find out, where do I place your work here? How does your work fit in there? You should be able to demonstrate that in as much as literature has done some things on this, on that, my research is going to contribute to literature by focusing on tourism destinations that have not been developed properly for an international tourist, for instance, for a domestic tourist, and all those kind of stuff. Is as that I would have contributed to my placing my work into context. So generally, I always want people to say, like, let's say Nyasha is looking at agritourism. I want you to just list 10 good articles, recent ones, from good journals that talks about agritourism. Just list them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Just list them. And you do the listing after searching. So you should know, I think at the university you have got your access to e-resources from the library, and they have taught you how to search for literature. And one of the ways of searching for literature is, if I don't say agritourism, I can say agriculture tourism. So sometimes if you search agritourism, a few papers come, but you will be limited because agritourism has got some other synonyms. So if I say agritourism, I should find another word that means agritourism and put also and search differently. It's going to generate you some good stuff of literature. So if you are looking at hospitality operations, what are the name does hospitality operations is? Or for instance, let me use an easy one. If I'm looking at a student can be a learner can be a school going whatever. So there's so many ways. A lecturer, a professor, a what. So every time in your title, always make sure that when you're searching for literature, you are not simply searching by putting impact of COVID-19 on hospitality operations. Have a way to turn it around and still get the same information, because that's how you're going to search. So if you don't have synonyms in your searching criteria, you are going to just get one study, and then you claim there are no studies when there are a million of studies around. I don't know if I'm very clear there. So you search the literature, you list, you learn from it, then you write. Writing should be the last thing to happen in your literature review after everything has been done. So in your literature review, remember you would have formulated your problem. That is the topic you are examining and the component of its issues. So this is how it works. When you look at your topic, I want you to break it down and say, okay, if I'm looking at hospitality operations, what am I looking at? Then you start looking for that literature and you start to develop that kind of literature for your review. So if you are able to break it down, then it means you'll be able to examine that literature properly and identify key issues that exist in that literature. So that's problem identification. You should have a topic or a field so that you can search for this literature. So when you look at your literature search, you are simply finding materials. And I was explaining that when you find materials, please don't just enter the topic impact of COVID-19 in Google search and that's it. Try to find out, if I don't put impact, I can put effect. If I don't put effect, I can put consequences. If I don't put consequences, what else can I put? That still talks about impact, effect, consequences. What else can I put? Anybody?
The aftermath.
The aftermath of COVID-19. You see, so it is going to generate you a lot of literature in that. So that's how we should find literature for the subject we are doing it. Then once you find that literature, not all the literature you have downloaded matters. So you could download 100 of them and only to find that 15 of these 100 are the articles that really talks to what I'm looking at. So when you download the articles, I want you to evaluate that literature. Determine which literature makes a significant contribution to the topic you are working on. Not every literature makes a significant contribution, but read around. Does this one help you to understand what you want to do? If it doesn't, throw it away, and then remain with literature that matters. Then once you are left with literature that matters, you now start to analyze that literature, to critically review that literature, to find out ways in which you are going to show why your study is required, is needed in this kind of study. So you analyze the literature from only the chunk of where you would have said this is important. So I would say, so if this is my literature, I have reviewed and only found that let's say this, instead of all this, only these few are good. Then from each of these, I'll start to analyze, what does this article talk about? What does this one talk about? And I interpret what it means. Then I discuss. So when you do your literature, don't just review the article, also read their findings. What did they find about? How different is the findings of these studies? Look at their methodology. Did all of them use the same method? If they didn't, then there's a gap. If most of the studies are qualitative and only two have used the quantitative and you are measuring impact of COVID-19 on hospitality operations, there is your theoretical gap, which comes in the form of methodology and all those kind of stuff. So please be able to interpret these papers, look at the findings of these papers, the conclusions that they have made regarding to literature. So that's how you're going to do it. Quite extensive though. Find it. And I've shown you how to find it, or I've explained how to find it. So you need to find it. You need to manage it. So managing it, you're supposed to read efficiently. One of the key things is to simply read the abstract and see in the abstract what these people are talking about. If they don't address your issues, you go to the next paper and so forth. So read efficiently, and please keep track of references, and then write relevant annotations from what you would have done from your reading. Then use it by choosing your research topic, developing your research questions based on literature, arguing your thesis or your rationale, informing your work regarding theory. Then you'll be able to design your method. So you can actually design your method by looking at, if all these papers I'm reviewing, 20 of them, I want to find out what is the methodology that is dominant for that. If it's qualitative, then I have no reason to do another qualitative study. My method should now be designed maybe along a mixed method or maybe a quantitative research. That's the only way I'm going to add value to literature. Then you review it. Review it, you need to understand the literature review's purpose. Make sure you have done adequate coverage of your literature. Then write purposefully. I always say writing is deliberate. Don't write things you don't want to write. Write only things you want to write. And work on your style. And in your literature review, I always want to hear your voice, than the voice of Kotler, than the voice of Creswell, than the voice of Musavengani. I want to hear what your voice is all about. So these are some of the sources of literature, journal articles. In my supervision, if I see you have cited fake science, I don't approve your proposal. I simply reject it. I encourage scholars to make sure that people who write fake science are not promoted. So we need to read from established publishers, Elsevier, Sage, Wiley, Francis and Taylor, Routledge, and all those kind of stuff. Avoid sustainability. I don't trust what they write in, even though they are indexed in Web of Science. I don't trust a journal that publishes over 10,000 articles in a year. I always think that is bullshit. So look at journal articles, and I don't know from MSU, what's the citation range? I always want my students to cite, if I'm in 2021, the oldest that I expect from you is 2016 coming through to 2021. How long does MSU, what's the accepted range of citations?
For MSU, we accept 5 years.
Okay,
but
so
sometimes there is, sometimes even six years, something like that. We emphasize on recent publications. Thank you.
All right. So make sure you emphasize on recent publications as well. Non-referred journals are also good, like trade journals, magazine, but they don't have rigor you find in other journals. And please don't entirely depend on them. All your story is based on the Herald. What is the newspaper in Botswana? I haven't bought a newspaper in Botswana, so I don't know. So you can't write anything based on the Herald or the Newsday or the Sunday Mail, and then you say this is scientific. Of course, you can get some information from the World Tourism Report, World Economic Forum, Zimbabwe Tourism Authority, Botswana Tourism, Botswana Revenue Authority, and all those kind of stuff. That's good literature. You can also get literature from books. You can also get literature from conference proceedings. At least these ones are very good because they give you the latest. I'm sure Dr. Msarangana can share with you one of the latest conference proceedings we had in January on tourism and technology. It's quite useful. It gives you an indication of what are the latest ideas around all that. There are also some COVID papers in it.
I'll send them the book, yes.
Okay, so you can also get information from government reports, your budgets, your statistical reports. You can also get information from Dr. Msarangana's thesis, their dissertations. Usually they're difficult to obtain, but you can get them. You can also get information from the internet. As long as you stay away from Wikipedia, I'm happy with that. I don't want to see any Wikipedia sources and some other funny stuff. Bear in mind that anyone can post anything on the internet. So please don't overly rely on the internet. One of the key things that I want to quickly demonstrate is when you are assessing each piece of literature, you need to find out what are the credentials of the authors. I really check that. So if I find something about what Ompile has written, I Google about you. What do you write about? Do you write credible stuff? And so forth. And if I find that at some point you've been writing some rubbish, I'm not comfortable using that kind of literature. So when you assess literature, please look at provenance. What is the author's credentials? Are their arguments supported by evidence or not? Or are they supported by recent scientific findings? Look at objectivity. Is the author's perspective even-handed or it's prejudicial? Is contrary data considered or is certain pertinent information ignored to prove the point? Let me demonstrate this. When you are now writing your dissertation, don't always, some of us, we are in quantitative research, people always want to report what we call statistically significant results. That's not correct. You report statistically significant results and also report non-significant results, because in that you are balanced. I have also had a discussion with the qualitative researchers, and I feel like qualitative researchers, they don't report what everybody else has said. They report dominant stuff. So when they report dominant stuff, what they do is they're really not objective like we do in quantitative research, because they are looking at dominant themes. And if one issue was just said by one person, then it's considered invalid. So also look at that and see. So if your hypothesis is not supported, all of it is not supported, don't feel bad about that. Report those results and explain what it means. Don't worry about how it came through. Also look at whether the argument of the author is persuasive. Is it convincing, or people are just writing for the sake of writing? Also look at, does the work you are reviewing, is it going to contribute significantly to an understanding of the content or the topic you are looking at? So those are the key issues in your literature review. You should always have an introduction, the body, and the conclusion. In your introduction, you should be able to define the general topic, the general issue, the general area of concern. You need to give people or a reader or an audience an appropriate context for reviewing the literature. Well, what do people write? When we write about branding, is it universally defined? And if it's not universally defined, how has it been defined? And what has been universal about it? When you write about satisfaction, what does satisfaction mean? Is it universally accepted or it is not? That's the kind of context people would want to hear in your introduction. If we look at COVID-19, I was arguing at some point in one of my recent papers to say that some people call it a crisis, some people call it, if it's not a crisis, it's called what? Now I'm forgetting. Crisis, if it's not a crisis, it's called what?
Pandemic.
It's a crisis. Do we mean disaster?
Yeah, is it a crisis or is it a disaster? Yeah, that disaster is the right word. So I was arguing that it depends from where you are looking things from. If you look things in a certain context, you're gonna find it is a crisis. If you look from the way the world has been turned upside down, then it's gonna become a disaster and all those kind of stuff. So in that, and then you go on to demonstrate, is your concern about showing whether COVID-19 is a crisis or a disaster? You need to be clear there. So you can actually say, however, this study is not concerned with going into details about making a discussion on whether it constitutes a crisis or it constitutes a disaster. But you would have provided that kind of context. And in your introduction, I would also be happy to get an understanding of an overall trend in what has been published about the topic. What are people busy with? What's the trend and all that? At some point, I was arguing that when we look at competitiveness in literature, it has always been approached from mature destinations. Talk about Australia, talk about Europe, talk about the US. In the African context, I would say competitiveness has not been well researched. I think there are very few studies that have done that in Africa, and one of the few studies you find is in South Africa. Then I would go on and argue that if you look at distressed economies like Zimbabwe, very little is known about what makes a distressed economy to be considered competitive by tourists and all that. I would have given you an overall trend of what has been published about the topic. Then I might even go on to show if there are any conflicts. Competitiveness is defined differently by marketers, defined differently by economists, defined differently by politicians. That's a conflict you're gonna find. So in your topic, always also try to show what kind of conflicts exist. Look at methodologies, I've talked about that. Look at the conclusions that people make. Do we make same conclusions? No. That should be your weapon to make arguments. Well, what are the gaps that research in literature? And like I said, I want to hear the voice of the writer. Establish the writer's reason. What is your point of view? If so much has been written, so if COVID-19 has been said to be a crisis and a disaster, what do you call it yourself? Do you call it like them? Or are you also confused? So you need to give us a position in terms of that and explain the criteria that you use in analyzing and comparing your literature. When you write your body, You must group research studies together that focus on different issues or other types of literature reviews. So you can look at researches that have been done as reviews, bibliometric studies. You can look at theoretical articles. You can look at case studies as a common group and look at what are the key issues coming from reviews, from theoretical articles, from empirical studies, from case studies. Then you look at those studies that have used a quantitative approach to measurement of the thing that you are looking at, what were their key issues, a qualitative approach, and what conclusions did these authors make, and so forth. Then you try to summarize this and also make sure your voice is heard. In your conclusion of that section, I prefer you also talk about major contributions that these studies have made, and also look at the major omissions that these studies have not dealt with in your review. You evaluate your current state of art, pointing out what are the methodological flaws. So when you read your methodology, don't just read a methodology to just find out what method did they use. Read that methodology to find, is there a flaw perhaps that they used in that design, for instance, right? So that it makes these things easier and all those kind of stuff. What are the methodological flaws? What are the methodological gaps? What are the geographical gaps? And when you conclude, make sure you are able to provide us with some insights into the issues around the central topic you are looking at in literature, and into the larger area of study, so that we have an understanding of all that. So it should go on like this, where you need to give us an explanation of the fundamental reasons of your research, and you need to justify why this research should happen. I like that part in literature review, why this research should happen. When there are so many numerous research on COVID-19 and hospitality operations, why should yours go ahead? When there are so many research that talks about funding of tourism, why should yours go ahead? So you should be able to explain, and you should be able to justify these things using literature and so forth. Just to run through a few things that have worked for me as a researcher is, I have learned to do effective searching of literature. And when I'm searching for literature, like I said, I don't always use the term that is in my topic. I use other synonyms. That has worked perfectly well for me. When you do literature, I still have got my PhD journal. I don't trust my mind, but I trust what I write. I don't trust my memory. I trust what I write. So what do? I get literature, and immediately, if I don't want to read about it, I write it down, because Google is very funny. It keeps some certain kind of algorithms, but sometimes it doesn't keep what you have said for some time. So what do? I just keep a credible research journal where I write issues that I want to do or things that I want to read about. I write them in my whatever. Even when I want to look at certain issues, I document them quickly so that in case I forget, I have backup. So I write everything I read. So if I'm reading about, these days I'm writing on virtual reality. So everything that I'm reading about virtual reality, I write it down on a separate page, and I write it down. And I don't just get journal articles like this and then start to write literature review. No, I get them, read them, understand them, write a summary, like to summarize what is Musavengana's article talking about. I summarize it. What is Shumba's article talking about? I summarize it. Then after summarizing, I read these articles, literature reviews, one by one, those that I have said, I know these ones are good papers that I want to use. Then I go on and read the literature reviews of each journal article, trying to get a sense of that. Then after reading, I ask questions. What were these people thinking? Okay, so when they were writing about this, does it mean this? When they were writing about this, why did they forget about talking about this? So as I form those questions actually helps me when I'm now writing my literature review, and I write those questions down. So when I'm writing my literature review, I write and revisit my questions and put them in my write-up to say that, okay, in as much as this was said about, this remains unanswered. I point out what remains unanswered. In as much as these people were writing about this, they were simply duplicating this and that, because I would have asked questions about all those things. So these things have worked for me. I don't know whether it is going to work for you and so forth. I think my time is past the, okay. What is going on? Okay, so I was saying I had a few issues to cover. Maybe we'll resume some other day and then talk about goals, research objectives, research objectives, why they should be SMART, research hypotheses, and all those kind of stuff, maybe the next time we meet. So let me open this for some questions, maybe for the next 10 minutes. If there are issues, let me have them, and I will be able to address all of them. Yeah. Anybody? No. Quietness means two things. It's either nobody understood anything.
Okay, the floor is now open, guys, for you to ask any questions that you have. There is also an icon there. If you see that forum there where there is reactions, if you want to lift up your hand, you can lift up your hand there as well.
Then this is not a good class. Yes, Tendai.
You know, when I was just listening, I was looking at my topic. So I felt like there's really a lot to be done, a lot really needs to be desired, because I see there are a lot of things that we need to do in order for you as our examiners to really agree and give us approval of what we should do. So I'm very grateful with this, because I think some of my things were not properly done. So I'm really quite helped with this discussion, especially on the topic on how to write the literature. You know, at times you write your literature and then you do not put your own point as well. You do not also, like you were saying, give your own opinion regarding what the other authors are saying. So I think it's quite very much helpful for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Sir,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yes, Nyasha, I can hear you.
Okay, I kindly wanted to ask, are there any scholars that you recommend for us to read on in terms of research?
By scholars, what do you mean?
Mhm.
Any names? You can include yourself.
Oh, you can only read about my work if your work intersects with my work.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you want to get a sense of how do I write, or if you want to get a general perception of how good people write, yes, you can read. I think Dr. Msalengane, you can also read his papers. You can read my papers. There are some other good scholars like Michael Hall. You can read his papers. Dimitrios Bohalis, you can read his papers. Stanislav Ivanov is a good robots researcher in tourism. You can read about that. Tusia Dia is also a researcher in AI in tourism. You can, there are really quite some fantastic. But I think in our area, Bohalis tends to lead the pack, and Michael Ho, these are really considered, and Rob Lowe, these are really considered the people who are leading the pack in terms of the knowledge that they have produced, and the impact of their work. You can also check Professor Rogerson's work, quite a prolific researcher we have close by. It's very good for you to check how do they write. Just today, I was reading about his article on COVID-19 in African tourism researchers. So those of you who are doing that research, you can also check there. I have projected it, COVID-19 and African tourism research agenda. So those of you doing research on this, this is the name, Christian Rogerson, very brilliant article he was writing. So there are actually areas of research that Africa should be focused on. Those are the African tourism research agendas that you might want to look at. And this becomes very brilliant in terms of how you need to do market confidence research, why we need to start rethinking why long haul visitors are not good for Africa, regional, domestic, and visiting friends and relative tourism, community-based tourism redefined, informal sector resilience. Zimbabwe is a good case study for this. Debating tourism and climate change after COVID-19, so many other stuff. So I think this could be helpful for you. I hope I have answered you. Did I? Nyasha is gone. Okay. Ompile, come through, please.
Yes, first of all, let me thank you, Doctor, for making research look like a...
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Nyasha.
Thank you for the discussion.
All right. Ompile, please come through.
Yes, I was saying, let me thank you for coming through to help us understand the research better. You know, it's really good on my side because I'm currently tutoring some undergrad students on doing their dissertations and research. And some of the points that we have touched, like coming up with the topic, it is something that that is really interesting, because in most cases, people just think about something that is already out there, and then they already have some answers to what they have, whatever they have brought forth to say is their topic. And then after that, they just take those answers and put in their work. So at the end of the day, it does not really become a good research or a research. So I think what you have given us right now will give us a lot to think about, especially looking at the assignments that we are doing currently, and also into the next semester we'll be doing our dissertation. So it really brought so many thoughts in my mind. Someone was commenting on my smiles. You are touching on many things. When you're talking about virtual reality, throughout this week, I've been reading on virtual reality, and it was really good to hear you saying something about virtual reality. And I think I'm growing a lot of interest in that area as well, especially looking at the what COVID have done right now. I think that's the direction that most of the people will be going. But I don't know. With research, we will see whether it's the right way to go or we may need to consider something else. But I'm really thankful that we got to learn from you today.
Thank you, Ompile, for your kind words. Thank you very much. Nyasha, come through.
Okay, say I wanted to ask something in terms of dissertation writing. One thing that I can understand, how different is writing a dissertation in undergrad and a master's? Are they similar, or one person told me with master's it's more of a framework. So how different it is so that I can know how to choose the topic.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. I think someone who told you that didn't tell you properly, and all that. So you see, one of my things that I tend to note is at undergraduate, I'm not sure if you really did good research. For me, my view on it is that people were perhaps introducing you to some basic fundamentals which you didn't have a good idea of. That being said, at master's level, especially at master's and PhD, at least from my university, we award a master's degree pass in dissertation if you have shown that your work contributes to theory and contributes to practice.
Yeah.
So if your work, so at undergraduate, I don't think you managed to demonstrate that. At masters, you should be able to demonstrate that your work contributes to theory. What does it add to existing literature? And what does it help people in hospitality industry, for example? After your research, what do we take from your findings and use them in order to improve the way we do things? So that's the major thing. What I picked from you there is perhaps you don't have a clear understanding of what frameworks could be. Maybe we might have time to talk about theoretical frameworks and conceptual frameworks, how different they are and how do they work.
Okay, thank you.
So for the doctoral program, you are awarded that degree if you are able to show 3 contributions. So your contribution to methodology, your contribution to literature, and your contribution to practice, then we award the degree to you. For the masters, we are simply concerned with your contribution to literature and your contribution to practice.
Yes. So it would be great to have such a lecture where we dwell on those things, because that's what differentiates a postgrad from an undergrad. Because in undergrad, basically what we are teaching you at undergrad is how to do research. We're trying to introduce to you what research is all about. But when now it comes to your implementing those things now, as Dr. Oyo said, thank you.
Yes, so we are now training you to be a master, and a master is someone who is, so after this, the expectation generally is master students should be able to publish research, and that's our expectations from master students. It's quite possible to start generating research And like Ompile, if you are teaching methodology and if you haven't published methodology, then it means you're teaching them lies. Sorry for that. But that is what I mean. People who teach methodology should be active publishers. If you are not publishing and you're teaching methodology, you are simply teaching other people lies. Ompile, your hand is up.
Yes, I was really going.
I like your
I was
smile,
going to
Ompile.
comment on that one because, but not necessarily talking about myself. I'm new in the practice and I'm just assisting where I can. I'm not really a finished researcher myself. But I was going to say, I've been working with people who have been in this field for a long time, but I have not seen any single paper that they have written. But it makes me wonder, how do these guys manage to be teaching this thing, but there's nothing that they are contributing, and most times they'll be complaining about time and stuff like that, but I think at the end of the day, something is not done right.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, so I don't know if there is, Denmark, you wanted to say something? If there is one more, I'll take one more and then close off the meeting.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I don't know what to say. It looks like we really have to study the subject in more detail. It was an eye-opener. Yeah, we need to really research and do, I'm just looking at the assignments that were given and what I have produced. I feel like starting. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So it's good to hear that it has been a helpful lecture, and we are going to implement one or two. I have been recording this on YouTube, so you have the opportunity to go over it over and over again. I'll send the link to Dr. For you to go there. I think on my side there, I have also been talking about various issues about writing research. You may also visit those recordings of last year and see how it can help you. So I think that was all from me. Thank you very much for allowing me to talk to you and to explain a few things to you. And I hope your research journey is going to be better. Over to you, Dr. Msawingane.
Hello. Before Mr. Dr. Msawingane comes in, can I please say something?
Hi, yes.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was quite impressive and an eye-opener also of the deficiencies that are really there on my part. If I were to take you back to your presentation, you spoke about the area of interest, that is the area of research. I think that that one we already given in our assignment that we are currently doing. But where I fell, where Solomon's fall was, reading material, the literature review on my area of research, I think I didn't do much. So much that when coming to my research questions, hello, am I still on air?
Yes.
Okay. I think when I constructed my research questions,
We can hear you.
if I recall what you said you must construct research questions that don't have obvious answers.
Yes.
And I think that's where my shortfall is. And it is on this platform that maybe I would appeal to Dr. Msawingane to give us an extension, maybe come up with with better presentations, because as it is, I think it's just a wasted effort on his part marking what I've written, really, because this presentation was due tomorrow and I don't see myself presenting what I
I have actually sat down to do, considering the presentation by by Dr. Wayo.
Oh, that's not for me to decide. I think those are internal housekeeping issues he is hearing. But basically what I was saying is, because if you review literature, it's going to show you some unanswered aspects. So it is those unanswered aspects that should constitute your research questions, because there are no answers for.
Yes. Yes.
If you find out that when you are developing an instrument, your instrument should be based on your research questions, or it should be based on your objectives.
Yes.
So whatever you are going to collect data for, it should be based on those questions that have not been answered. And those are the issues that you really need to answer in your study. So that's why literature review is very important. On the extension, I'm sure Doctor will be generous. I wouldn't want to read or to listen to things that are not proper, because my view at this level is you already have a degree, and what you don't have is perhaps competencies that are necessary for what you should be doing. So I am more on the competence developed side than on passing side. So you can pass and still don't have competence, then you are a useless graduate. But if you pass with good competencies, then that becomes fantastic. And I would appreciate that. I would have made impact in somebody's life.
Yeah, that's very true, Doc. I'm so happy that at least we are managing to find our shortfalls as a class. So the extension was what we need. We need quality work after being taught how to do things. They have to put it in practice. Then they'll produce something.
I think the doctor is breaking.
Which is more tangible, that we can accept. Yeah.
All right, so I think let's go. It's now very dark here. I need to drive home, and perhaps you guys are already home. So see you next time. Then we may talk about other things the next time we are having. When is the next time?
Can it be soon?
Saturday at 10?
Saturday for me will be a bit problematic. I'll be traveling.
Oh, you watch it later.
All right.
Yeah. And what's your point? And your hand is up. Are you in agreement with Saturday at 10?
She's muted.
Yeah, he's muted.
Okay, maybe on Saturday in the afternoon, say maybe 2 o'clock. But Saturday is very possible, but I don't know if we can still agree on 10, but I think in the afternoons are much easier. Like maybe say 2 or yeah.
But I was simply.
Come again?
Okay, I was saying maybe on Saturday in the afternoon, say 2, somewhere there, I don't know. Let's say maybe we can say 2 to 4 at least, because I've seen that with our time we had said from 6 to 7, 1 hour. Now we are already to 8. So I think if we can do our 2-hour sessions are much more easier, then we can have some questions and so forth. So I think if we can say Saturday where we have more time at 2, if we start at 10, meaning to say until 12 or somewhere 1. I don't know about others, but I think I can also be a bit flexible.
Yeah, but my thinking was Saturday in the afternoon. My family has been in lockdown for a long time, so we were planning to to have some drive. So that's why I wanted it early. So if we were to do it 10 to 12, then it gives me time to make the trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
For me and Denmark, I think we are okay for
Okay. 10
Saturday
is
10.
Okay, so we
Right.
meet at 10 using the same. So we meet at 10 using the same link. On Pile, you find it on YouTube.
Yeah, that's okay with me. I don't have any problem with that.
All right, so it's goodbye for now.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much, Doc.
you.
All right, bye.